In this video, we're going to be tackling our motor that runs the automatic steps. When we got the camper, it wasn't working. The guy said that he ordered a new motor and it was somewhere in the camper and it wasn't. So they shipped us, because it was kind of part of the deal, a new step motor. Now these things aren't expensive anymore. I don't believe it's more than 30-40 bucks, but this is the motor that I just got delivered. It came basically with just the motor, the power pigtail, and then an additional, separating point that you hardwire that in and hook it up. I have removed the old motor, but one of my steps today is to test this motor to determine whether the motor is actually bad, which I think it is. But the guy said that it would put the steps out, but when it came back in, it would start clicking. Doing some research myself, I'm afraid that the problem is not the motor, but it is the gears, and not the gear on the motor, but the gear on the plate. And I'll go down and I'll explain. It looks like it's kind of worn in a certain area, and it just slips. The gears actually slip. So on top of that, as most of you I'm sure are already aware, there is a sensor that when you open the door, the steps come out. When you shut the door, the steps come back in. It's an option. There's a switch here, intra-steps, where you can have it stay out, or you can have it where it comes in and out as needed. That little magnetic sensor, which this is part of it here, is mounted on the screen door. But if you notice, there's no screen door on this RV. Not anymore anyway. I removed the screen door for two reasons. Number one, it had been remounted so many times that it was not secure. It was not firm on the hinges. And I felt like, and it was causing this door not to be able to close properly, because it was just not setting right. And instead of trying to fix an issue that's been repaired multiple times poorly, the chances of getting it fixed properly would have been very difficult. And obviously I can always replace the door, but I'm never going to use the screen door. We're going to be traveling with dogs, bigger dogs. I'm concerned that if they see something they really want, the screen door is not going to hold them. And if we want fresh air to come through, we'll just open the windows. So having the screen door is not a selling point for me. So I removed it, took care of the door issue, but that removed where the trigger for the automatic door steps. There's two options here. Mount a new magnet somehow on the door itself to so when it closes it does that, which I've thought about, but the door doesn't come all the way in. The inside door kind of closes here about halfway in, so I'd have to fabricate something. Or my second option was to hardwire this switch together, so it always that I have a switch that I can either manually open and close the doors when I need, or the steps when I need. And I bought the switch. I can easily wire up this thing and just put a switch here so I can just trigger it back and forth when I need to, which I thought was probably the best option. And this should basically take place of where this magnet is. So basically, if for whatever reason we want to open the door and we want the switch to come out, or whatever the case may be, just flip the switch, the stairs will come out, and then the coach is smart enough to know when the ignition on is to pull them back in anyway, so it's going to override that. So I just felt like that was an easier solution, so that's going to be part of today's video too. I'm going to pop down real quick and show you what we've got so far to work with, and then we're going to start digging into this and hopefully getting this thing taken care of today. Alright, we're underneath the coach here, and right now I've got this thing hooked up with a chain. I had to move it, and I took the motor out that was holding the step, so this step can freely come out. So I hooked it up with this just extra chain that I had to hold it in place while I moved the coach. So I'm going to undo this chain here, just wrapped around the frame and around the step, hooked on the step. But this gear is what I'm talking about. And you can kind of see it if you look closely. The gears that are over at the very end are nice and thick. But when it comes down to here, they're kind of small and thin. And I'm thinking this is where it slipped, kept on slipping, and causing the issue. But I'm hoping that there's enough gears there to help it work, or keep it working. So I'm gonna go and pop these steps down, and then we'll wire the switch up and make sure we have the proper voltage and things we need, and then hopefully the new motor will fit in place with no issue. Another issue I had when I took this motor off initially, it just didn't record, is when this, you can kind of see how this works. This plate with the gears on it spins, the motor mounts right here and spins this and pushes it out and then comes in. When I first took this motor off, I had an issue because it seems like this thing right here hyperextended in, and it actually locked it pretty tight in there. And I had to get a crowbar or pry bar to pry this out to, if you can see how it kind of stops right there. It was actually overextended all the way out and kind of locked, almost like if the joint in your knee or something would overextend and lock out. So I'm thinking that at one point it was out with skipping the gears, and it thought it needed to go out more, so it actually pushed it out even farther and locked it out, and it was pretty much stuck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and push it in the open position, and I'm going to get something to pry underneath, or step underneath this. I've got some bricks there to hopefully keep this in the full extended position. Alright, so I got the brick underneath there, so it's just keeping that step up. And we're going to start working on the wiring situation here. I'm assuming this is where the other motor was tied into, and you can see that they were doing some troubleshooting here, where they had cut this open and it was just twisted together. I should be able to, I'm a little concerned with getting the new motor on because just the way it mounts on here. It's not screwed into this plate. It's like a bolt with a nut on it, and there's no easy way to get up here to where you have to hold the nut. So I might take this whole plate down to mount the motor on and then put the plate back on. I don't know. Well, when I purchased this switch, I didn't realize how massive it was. I thought it was a much smaller just switch. It is rated for outdoors. So the idea was to put it inside so I can open the door, reach in and flip the switch, let the release the steps if need be, and take care of that. But I could mount it on the outside if I wanted to, but I would rather everything be on the inside. So I'm trying to get to these wires here. There's a couple little screws that I've got to remove here. It removes this little panel, which then exposes the magnet and the wiring and the harness and all the cables. So not knowing exactly where I'm going to mount this switch and how I'm going to hide this wire. This wire is a little bigger than I expected, but this is where I'll be tying into that control right there. So I've decided to mount the switch right about here. There's this trim piece that goes up and around the door. I have taken a couple Phillips screws out and the little caps pop off. And this switch is small enough to go inside. I'm trying to go as high as I can with the pigtail that I have, but I'm going to be probably cutting a notch in this trim to get this wire behind the trim and into the channel where it needs to hook up. But it'll fit right in there. And it's going to be a little low for people that are in the cabin that want to flip the switch, and it's going to be a little, I want to say a little high, but it's going to be higher than normal for anybody outside that needs to flip the switch for the steps. But that's a good half medium spot here. You didn't see that. All right, so I brought it down, the wire, cut a little notch in the back of this channel, brought it down. I haven't put this in because I needed some room to pull the wire, but made the connections. Now there is some sort of color code here, but in this scenario it doesn't make any difference. What we're doing is we're just completing a ground circuit, so it really doesn't matter what color goes to what color. You flip the switch one way and it's going to open the circuit, and the other way is going to close the circuit. So that's all. So really in this case it doesn't really matter. I'm just tuck this back and put this channel back on, and the inside work here will be taken care of. All right, completed job. Everything's back on. Really hard to see. Panel, all the wires are tucked in and hidden, and the switch is right there. So that should take care of everything. All right, so I'm troubleshooting this, and I know nothing about these steps, so I'm trying to figure it out as I go. However, whether I put in the new motor or the old motor, and I'm not hooking up to the gears, but let's see if I can see the motor here. This is the new motor. Just got it not just loosely hooked up here. When I disconnect the power to the whole harness and I plug the power back in, the motor obviously comes on and runs. And it runs, and I hear a click up here that kind of says something's wrong maybe, and it shuts off the motor. Regardless of what the switch is inside, whether the door was open or closed, that's the only thing this thing does. And it only does it when you unplug and plug in the main control panel up here. And I got to thinking, how does this motor know when the step is out and or in? The motor itself doesn't. It's got to be some sort of switch or mechanism in this panel, or this system up here, that basically controls the motor, that tells it, okay, the steps are out, it needs to come in, or the steps are in, they need to go out. So I'm thinking that that is what is causing the problem, and not necessarily the motor, because the old motor is doing the same exact thing. So I've got to take this down, and it looks like there's 4 screws. I've got to take this mechanism off to remove it from this pivoting bar thing that goes and controls the step. But actually there's 4 bolts that will drop this down, and I'm thinking on the back side of this there's some sort of sensor or something that indicates, that tells this guy when the steps are out or in. I can't see anything down here that would indicate that. The only other thing that I see down here, which I'm not sure what this is for, it looks like there was a wire at one point connected to this somewhere, somehow, for some reason, but I don't see the other end of it, and I'm not sure what that would be. I see this power, but I think that this was something someone ran, because there's these LED lights that are down here, and maybe they had it on that switch. And this switch here, there's a switch inside that turns on and off this light. So I'm thinking that that's basically all that was. But I've got to figure out what might be up here that will tell this motor that to turn on or go out or come in. So I'm going to pop this off and see what it tells me. That doesn't really show me anything. I was hoping that there was going to be some sort of switch or something that indicates, but I don't see anything. Just a ground, and then this device. Maybe this device needs to be replaced. I'm not sure. I can look up a model number here and see how much and see if it's worth just purchasing and replacing, but let me do some research. Alright, what I found is this device right here on Amazon for $42. The reviews say it fixes most issues with step out, you know, step stuck out issues and things like that. But for $42 I might try it out, because I don't know of anything else that might be causing this issue that I'm having. And this is the product right here. So I'm going to order that and then we'll cut back in with this video. We're back. We got the replacement control panel for the steps here. I'm going to pop it open. I'm not going to mount. I'm just going to hook it up and see if for whatever reason it does anything different. So I'll try to identify whether or not this controller was bad or if it's another problem. It comes in this fancy little static electricity controlled bag, and it's got the pigtails and the controller itself. Let me show you. I'm just gonna go here. It's exact replacement. Alright, so looks like this is the pigtail for the actual controller, which is a little different than what I've got now, so I might have to cut into this wire, which kind of stinks, especially just to try this out. Alright, well, because I'm going to have to cut this wire to tie in this motor, I'm going to be at a point of basically no return. So I'm going ahead and making sure everything is connected, mounted. I'm just going to use the new one regardless. And I'm going to have to make some adjustments here when it comes to wiring up this light. And I want to cut, and I'm going to use the proper cable connectors for the motor. So it's going to take me a minute to do this, get this thing mounted and installed, and we'll cut back in once we get it all installed. Well, we got it all wired up and in place, got the light on. I will honestly say I don't know what I'm doing. Just trying to replace all my parts here and hope for the best. The motor did the same exact thing. It just ran and ran and ran and then just stopped. So I have a feeling that maybe it has some sort of sensor when it knows it hits its point or something. So I'm just going to put it all back together and hope that by replacing everything, the motor works as it's supposed to. So I'm going to put everything back together and go from there. Alright, so I've got the gearbox installed. I had to fabricate with some hardware because there was either something missing or I lost something. But there are these little spacers that keeps the motor at the right height, so the gears line up properly. And I had two of the spacers. I don't know if there was a third spacer when I took this off and I lost it, or maybe that was possibly the problem, because I know they were troubleshooting this themselves. But so I had to fabricate another spacer with a oversized nut and some washers. And then the bolt that I was missing the nut on it, so I had one. All right, so I got the everything hooked up. The step is turned on as if it was normal. And like I said, I like you saw before, I flipped the switch to bypass the screen door. When I flip the switch, there we go, and that's in the out position. So the motor runs until it feels a stop, and then it cuts off, and that's why the motor was running seemingly for a long time. So the switch, or the force mechanism that tells this thing to go out or in is actually built into the motor itself. But I flip it the other way, and it comes in. Like something's going on. And I think those gears are just tore up from it slipping or whatever, and maybe because the spacer wasn't there and it was not right, I don't know. So the next step is to get this thing mounted back to the steps themselves and see if it works. So I'm gonna go get that on. I'm getting the steps to do more than they've ever been able to do before. However, it's doing what the guy explained to me it was doing. So it's not the motor, it's not the control, it's weird. So let me show you. It's obviously out, they're secured, it's all hooked up. When you shut the door, or when you flip the switch, there you go. Bring it back out, it'll go all the way out, stop, great. If it goes in and you assist it, I can get it to come all the way back up. Well, in that case it didn't, it actually stopped. It's almost like it's under too much pressure and it's stopping. It's thinking it's all the way in and it's not. And it's not necessarily the outward motion, but the inward motion. So if I assist this to come back in, you hear that? That's what the guy says it was doing before. It's clicking, and that's the gears stripping. So it's not the motor, it's not the controller. We know the gears are bad. I don't know if I'll have to look and see how much that whole plate costs. But even at that, it's like, it's not strong enough to bring it back in all the way. So that's just the gears slipping. And it's only going to run for so long before it gives up anyway. So let me do some research and see if I can figure out those gears. See if there's a new piece or panel. But I'm concerned, even if it has some good set of gears on there, is it strong enough? Is there something that I'm missing here that's supposed to have some sort of assist when it comes back up? I can manage this. I just have to assist it to come back up and make sure it's up. But the problem is, you have to be on the outside of the camper, flip the switch, assist it to come up, and then jump up in it, because there's no other way into this camper. So that's inconvenient. All right, and then the magic of YouTube, we've got our new gear plate that came in. I also ordered another spacer that's supposed to be the same as this, and it's not. Look at that, a little different. But this thing was 15 bucks, and it says it was an exact replacement for what I was looking for, but as you can see, it is not. But I'll still use it. Better than the stack of nuts and washers that I was trying to do. But this guy here looks like an exact replacement. So I gotta pop this old one off, put the new one on, put it all back together, and hopefully that'll take care of this issue. All right, as you saw in that quick video, just pop the cotter pin off, washers, there's a couple washers underneath, and then there's these plastic, I don't know what they're like, slide things. There's one, it's hard to see, but there's one right back here that holds this gear in place, and then two up here that this thing just slides on. And all of them, they look a little worn, but they look like they'll be okay. So I'll put this thing back on where the other one was, and again, you see the gears, how bad they were here. All brand new gears, all super long. Hopefully that'll take care of the problem. right, well, we got pretty much everything's new here. New motor, new gears, new controller. I'm going to tighten up these wires and stuff to make it look a little nicer if this actually fixes the problem. There's not much mechanically else I can change. I think that's in there good enough. If this doesn't work, but make sure that nothing's going to hit here. Let's plug this thing in. It's not going all the way in. And I'm not sure why. I can assist it, but it's like the pressure of it coming all the way in is too tight that it thinks it's hitting its max, and it's the motor shutting off thinking it's at its limit. That didn't sound good. It almost sounded like the gears slipped again. That's the gear slipping. Why is the gear still slipping? That's not good. That's what caused those gears to look so horrible. Okay. The problem, let me see if I can set you guys up, and I know it's getting a little darker under here, so it's a little hard to see. But the problem, I'm looking a little deeper. I pulled this thing back down, and this motor is supposed to be locked in line with this gear and level. Let's see if I can kind of point you guys. And I felt when I pulled it before, I should have taken a video of it before, but when I pulled it off, it wasn't completely level the way it should have been. And it caused the gears to possibly not line up properly and be a little high. So these spacers, right here, they have a little, these are the original ones, they have a little groove on them, and they fit in there to hold in. And then there's no groove on this side, so it just sits on top of there. And I'm thinking, because I'm using this other spacer back here, that when I tightened it down, it actually pulled the motor back a little bit, which caused the gears to possibly not line up properly. So I'm going to try to remount this, put an extra little washer in this backside to keep this motor from tilting back the slight bit, because the difference here is literally the thickness of a washer. So let's try that. Not only am I putting a new washer in to up the spacers to make the spacer as thick as the other one, I'm upgrading the hardware, the bolt that comes through, to a thicker bolt. My thought process, I don't know if these are the original bolts or not, but put it through there, and there is quite a bit of play, and that little bit, that 1/8 of an inch, could play a factor, since we only have these kind of threads. So this bolt, just some stuff I had laying around, it's going to fit in the hole much smoother, much tighter, and no play. So I'm guessing that these might not have been the originals. It could have been, but it might not have been. So I'm going to upgrade those while I'm here. All right, it's getting kind of dark out here, but it looks like it's lining up a lot better. I'm trying to use my cell phone as a light. it looks level and straight. Another thing I noticed that down here, you see this cutout right here, right there where my pinky is? That's the center part of the gear on the motor. And before I took it off, this was not centered. It was almost off, like it was off. And that could have been one of the reasons as well. But I think putting the thicker bolts in really made it focused exactly where it needs to be. I'm not sure if this is going to fix the problem, because like I said, it seemed like the steps were too heavy and it was shutting it off. But regardless, let's put it back on again and see if that fixes the problem. All right, let's try it again. No slipping of the gears, that's good. That's not good. What can I do to make that less stress on the motor to come in? Is there like a spring? Or do I need to grease it or something? I don't know. At least I solved the gear issue. Also, it does seem like the light is backwards. I don't know why that would be that way. So the light comes on when the steps are in. You'd think it would be light was on when the steps are out. Well, at least we're halfway there. Well, I solved the light issue where the light is on while it's out. The wires needed to be reversed for the motor. I kind of color coded it. I went red to red, black to yellow. Thinking red and red should be the same, but and now it's red to yellow, black to red, or yeah, black to red. So it's a little backwards, but that solved the light issue. But still, doesn't seem like it's going to take much. Maybe I need to grease up all these, put some lubrication on all these things. Maybe that'll do the trick. If not, I might have to put some sort of, rig up some sort of spring to help come in, and hopefully not put too much pressure on it coming out, because I'd rather it work perfectly without having to assist it to come in. Putting together this video, and I found that I never really closed it out. What I wound up doing is putting some WD-40 on all the points here. There's a lot of them. I think 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 points on the steps alone on each side, so 14 where it needed to be oiled up. Got some WD-40 and really sprayed it, and I also sprayed where the motor and the hinge and the gear and everything was, and it's not perfect, but it goes up almost all the way, and I'm happy with that. So I'm going to continue greasing it up and using it, and hopefully by that constant motion and using it, then we've got a working step. But I'm just kind of ecstatic the fact that we got some working steps here. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this entire video. I know it was pretty long, and I'm not an expert, but hopefully you can take some of this information and use it towards your problem, and hopefully it helps. So thanks for watching. Everything that I used, everything that I purchased is going to be linked in the description below. Some things were on Amazon. Other things I had to buy off eTrailer, like the gear plate, I had to buy that on eTrailer. But hopefully this will help and get you guys going in the right direction to get your problem fixed. So leave some comments down below. It might help me with my issue. It might help other people who watch this video that are having issues as well. So anyway, until the next video, we'll see you then.